those two stablecoins are basically the closest thing to money that we have on chain. The largest consumer-facing businesses have released their own stablecoin, trying to cut out the call of the credit card companies. Pandora's box has opened.
Welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Real World Value, where we focus on real world assets and digital assets of all kinds and the consumer applications that will be powering them in the future economy. So today we get our guest from Noble, and we got none other than the founder. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here in Seoul, one of my favorite cities in the world. And I was just saying,
cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and it's my fifth time here, so it's a pleasure to be back. So I'm Jelena. I'm the founder, CEO of Noble. Noble is a purpose-built stablecoin issuance protocol built on the Cosmos stack. So we actually initially were founded back in kind of middle to late 2022 after the Terra collapse, which is also a very relevant topic here in Korea. And basically what we found was purpose-built stablecoin infrastructure makes a lot of sense to reach the masses. We believe in the app chain thesis. We're Cosmos builders. But of course, you need fundamentally safe, reliable stablecoins that you're going to issue that are, properly collateralized, properly regulated. So that's how Noble was founded. Our first partner was Circle, where we brought native USDC to Cosmos. And we've just been very fortunate and happy and excited to be building kind of the stack ever since then. And of course, as I was saying before we started rolling, the stablecoin chain meta, I guess, is like now the main meta. But for us, obviously, we kind of anticipated this for some time. So that's Noble in a nutshell.
And yeah, Jelena, you've talked a lot about this relation to the Terra collapse and how Noble was pretty much inspired by this collapse and everything you just mentioned. Obviously, when it comes to remembering the Terra days, there's a lot of there's like PTSD that the industry has, because the algorithmic stablecoin thing was tried several times before that, but it was only then that it properly crashed to the point where people will never forget about it. So have you faced trouble like with the stablecoin chain purpose?
Yeah. No, it's a good point, right? Like, one of my principles is we need to know where we came from to know where we're going. And obviously, again, being so intimately involved in, this kind of burgeoning kind of ecosystem of like many sovereign chains from the very early days, like, myself and kind of broadly, this Cosmos community always really believed in this app chain thesis, which of course now is like a dominant thesis, not just within Cosmos, but across, every stack. And basically, Noble's like kind of mission and our principles around like reliability and like seamlessness and like safety and simplicity, which UST was not so simple, right? And so that actually inspired us to really focus on, again, like the most kind of blue chip, safe, reliable kind of stable coins. And again, we were very fortunate to work with Circle in the early days to bring native USDC to the ecosystem. And I would say those early principles have followed us until today. And I think, it's a typical founder story of like the origin kind of beliefs and principles like just drive us today. And of course today, we've come a long way since those early days. But I think it's okay if you're resisting something and that's your motivation to build something better and, more reliable.
Is that where the name comes from? Like a Noble version of this? That's
such a good question. It's funny. I came up with the name Noble in Seoul, in Gangnam, at a hotel cafe in 2022 when we were, again, just like starting the project. It's technically a double entendre. There's two meanings. It's noble, yes, because it's like whatever, doing good, but it's also noble because of noble gases and the periodic element of tables. So they're stable, they're inert, they're abundant. So it's two meanings.
All right. See, like there's always something to know.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a chain that is built for this purpose, one thing I was excited to learn about is how do you envision it growing? Obviously, the stablecoin meta for a lot of people is very simple. Like you want to send money, you want to receive money, you want to do it cross borders, you want to do it permissionlessly, and so on. But there's always more things that can be built with this composability and with all of the programmability that comes with doing this stuff on the blockchain.
Yeah.
So how do you see this evolving over time?
I guess like on two fronts. So one, like taking a step back from the crypto space and like looking at it from like a big picture, stable coins, like fundamentally, now that we have like legislation coming in the US with Genius, in other places like in Korea, it actually sets this like the standard or the opportunity for a revolution in payments. Like I was just chatting with some friends before I came here, and if you like look at the like history of payments and when payments became, call it like modern or digital, it kind of started in the 70s, right? And then like the early credit card companies, and then, you know, kind of getting rid of like the traveler's checks. And then eventually, you know, we had the early internet and, you know, being able to do payments online. And then of course, once the internet scaled, you had like fintechs and kind of more, you know, scalability that way, you know, cloud-based payment solutions, all of these things. And actually stablecoins are part of that story. So stablecoins, of course, being able to, you know, be transferred and issued and redeemed on blockchain infrastructure is actually basically a huge improvement over like call it legacy payment infrastructure. So that's like the one side of the equation. And then call it on like the blockchain side of the equation, it's interesting. Like you mentioned, you know, there's all these like purpose-built stablecoin chains. Like why is that? Are they necessary? And I think it's like early days to know exactly what will happen, but I suspect what will happen is you'll have dedicated protocols for specific types of payments, right? So, you know, this, again, like coming from like this app chain thesis mentality, you know, you're going to have application-specific protocols, blockchains that do specific types of payments. Maybe it's B2B, maybe it's B2C, maybe it's a specific remittances corridor, maybe it's you know, something along the lines of more consumer-facing payment applications. Maybe it's something more financial in nature. So again, like to be determined what that looks like, but inevitably you're going to have, you know, the opportunity for these purpose-built infrastructure protocols like Noble to service a very important use case within the very broad payments landscape.
And being so broad, you would imagine that right now we live. Obviously, in crypto, everything feels like forever, right? But
no, really? Never.
Everything feels like, oh, we've had the USDT for as long as humanity has existed.
Yeah.
And sort of like USDT and USDC are sort of ubiquitous, and they're sort of interchangeable in the minds of most people in crypto.
Yeah.
What I do think is that over time, stablecoins will branch out to become more niche, especially under the hood of the applications that use them and the infrastructure that facilitates their movement.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point, just like, again, reminding like ourselves of like history and where we're come from and like where we're going. Yes, like in January of 2020, before COVID, you know, became a global pandemic, the stablecoin market was actually, I'm not going to ask you to guess, but I could.
Do it.
Guess.
Yeah. What's the question?
January 2020. What was the market cap of the stablecoin of stablecoins?
I have a rough number in mind.
So this was before
200 billion.
200 million?
Billion.
No, half a billion. Well, today it's 275.
Oh, so I was way off.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it really?
Yeah. So in January 2020, the stablecoin market cap was $500 million.
Damn, we're so early.
Yeah, right. Because what happened was, of course, Tether was the first stablecoin, you know, founded like around 2014 or so. And then, of course, USDC launched in 2018, a few years later. And then, you know, before COVID hit, that grew to about $500 million in total market cap. And then you had DeFi summer and you had, you know, the explosion with rates being so low. And, of course, stablecoins were a big part of DeFi summer and DeFi taking off. So anyways, the point being is that, yes, it's like early days. And I think anybody that tries to suggest that there'll be like one chain to rule them all doesn't make sense to me.
No, and you have seen like I think we're pretty much done with the L1 wars the way they started. Now people think about L1s in a very different way than they used to, and people understand that like there will be new L1s coming up. Some of them like serving very specific use cases, and some of them serving very infrastructural use cases, and some of them will be like general purpose and use like the way Ethereum and Solana are right now. But of course, as these things consolidate, it'll be harder and harder to compete with them. I mean, God knows what happened to Cardano, and God knows what happened to a lot of those other chains that were there in earlier days. The question I was going to ask you is like, since historically we're at this point where like stablecoins are catching up, stablecoins are feeling like more of a solved use case that now needs distribution and now needs adoption, but for the most part on the technical front, it's done. We know what we're doing. How do you see like niches developing for which stablecoins are used for what thing?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I guess I would approach it in like a couple of ways, like both from like the kind of infra side and then like the user side. So if you kind of think about it like from the infra side, right, like which stablecoins like dominate, basically being able to like atomically like swap between different cryptos, which, stablecoins dominate in terms of being used as collateral because they have, sufficient, integrations with like, the kind of the real world and, are also very, very liquid, which stablecoins kind of function most likely as money. And I mean, the obvious answers are like USDC and USDT, right? Like that's very, very clear that those two stablecoins are basically the closest thing to money that we have on chain right now. So where does that leave all the other stablecoins, right? Including the stablecoins that Noble supports, including Noble Dollar. I think it's going to become very interesting because on the consumer side, you're going to have a lot of different applications and basically call it like branded stablecoins, right? Branded dollars or euros, maybe, but really it's going to be dollars because many, people over the world desire dollars for various reasons. And these branded dollars will be, again, like used as payments, as loyalty. They'll be used for a variety of different payments. It'll feel like you're using, a traditional, neo-banking application or remittances application. And basically, one thing that I'm really excited about is what do those branded dollars do for loyalty and like actually just thinking about like the psychology of like consumer spending and thinking about kind of branding from that perspective. Like, is that maybe the opportunity for, call it the distributors that like do most of the commerce, that sell most of the goods, that have that existing customer base? Is that maybe how they're going to start adopting these rails? Maybe, right? And so I think that's to me one of the most interesting places we're going to go, but it's kind of like we're almost like going to have this like explosion of branded dollars, different providers under the hood being able to support the issuance and the minting of those dollars. But
and
then
the yield on top of that.
And the yield that gets to be distributed to the brands and the retailers and the the exchanges or any distribution partner really. And basically, it's going to create potentially fragmentation. So we're going to go back to what we understand in crypto when we think about fragmentation. So, I feel like we're going to like oscillate. We're going to take 3 steps forward, right? We're going to have this like explosion of like incredible use cases that are retail focused, consumer focused, about the, a payment instrument. And then we're going to quickly run into like scalability challenges, not because the underlying blockchain is necessarily not fast or secure, but like how do you stitch everything together? Like, right? So then you're going to have like, you're going to need interoperability and you're going to need all of these infrastructure pieces that, in crypto we understand because we all had to use a bridge at one point or another. But if you're a corporate retailer or a bank or a fintech or, that's going to have to be something you have to figure out. So we're just at the beginning.
I think one point I've been making across my main talk that I've been doing all over town this week is precisely what you just said. In the beginning, crypto had this triangle always in mind, and it was security, scalability, and decentralization. And the big promise was that when we solved scalability, because we already had the centralized network that were secure, when we solved scalability, the promise was like we would get mass adoption. And what happened was that we tried to be scalable, and we ended with what you said, a ton of fragmentation. And fragmentation is seen in the shape of like you need a ton of different gas tokens. You need to bridge to access a chain. You need to pay for bridging costs. You need to rely on these solutions that are for bridging that are not always secure or that are not always friendly to the user.
Exactly.
So what we're proposing as Particle Network is that the tip of that triangle was actually good user experience. And that comes obviously with the challenge of solving fragmentation. What role do you think chains such as Snowball can play in solving this fragmentation for everyone that uses these stablecoin rails, let's say, as opposed to causing more fragmentation?
Well, it's a really relevant question for us because basically, when Noble was founded, we wanted to solve liquidity fragmentation in Cosmos, right? So there was, 50, 75, blockchains that were all connected via a, common message passing standard, IBC, and that created immense fragmentation, obviously, because you basically had distinct execution environments, distinct state machines that were independent of each other, that were sovereign, right? So Ethereum, of course, it's like a monolithic, it's all encompassing. You don't get the same issues on Ethereum mainnet. Obviously now you get the issues with the L2s, but basically, we kind of saw that early days. And so that was actually the core thesis, make sure that protocol, that central hub, call it, being Noble, could orchestrate across all of these places, and that's what we intend to continue to do across the applications that we support that are maybe more traditional in nature, and then of course all of the things you mentioned, like gas abstraction, we had native being able to pay with USDC as a gas token, as a fee token from day one, actually. So these are all things that I think are pretty obvious, and again, we were fortunate to have those tools at our disposal because we are building again with this Cosmos stack.
Funny to hear, that we're relating back to Cosmos, because obviously the promise of IBC was that it would make all the app chains interoperable, right?
Of course.
And you would think you don't have the issue of fragmentation there. If that's the case, what did you think went wrong there?
Well, IBC is still a bridge, right? So yes, out of the box, you can use IBC. You don't have to make a deal with a bridging provider and pay them money. It's open source. It's the TCP/IP of the internet. That allows for message passing. That's the concept. But you still need applications and middleware and other additional elements on top of IBC to facilitate a good user experience, right? And so, again, that was Noble's original mission. We solved that. And I think what went wrong maybe is incentives, right? If I'm a sovereign layer one, maybe I actually don't want interoperability with other sovereign app chains because that might compromise my liquidity moat. I actually think that's the wrong incentive. And we've seen time and time again with more interoperability, more bridging solutions, more, chain abstraction techniques. You're going to get users if you have a good product. So you can't lock people in a moat that people don't want to be in because they'll leave anyway somehow. So maybe that's what went wrong. But again, sometimes I think Cosmos and crypto in general has been a petri dish for the real world, where it's there is real money at stake, but it's also very, early internet vibes.
Yeah, totally.
And so you kind of get the sense, okay, we're all just experimenting, and maybe we're not experimenting with cat videos on the early YouTube channels, but we're experimenting with money, in DeFi.
And that experimentation has gotten to a point where crypto is at its most geopolitical it's ever been, and at its most institutional, obviously, because now we were just talking about this in the previous podcast. Last year, if you were here, it was all partying for the most part. And now you go to these events and there's so many institutional players. There's so many, like, things do feel a lot more serious in this part of the world and obviously in our part of the world. And you mentioned this, like, these assets are going to continue to be denominated in US dollars for the most part because there's a huge appetite for US dollars across all economies. And it's even been said expressly by people in the US government that they see stablecoin friendly regulation as a way to maintain the dollar's strength as the settlement asset. That I might be butchering the terminology here, like the settlement asset that gets used for the world economy. Being so close to the action, living in the US yourself, how do you see this panorama changing with this administration?
Yeah. Oh, it's really interesting. I mean, like I kind of mentioned, earlier, like stablecoins are fundamentally just revolution payments, right? And sometimes I think about like, like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And who is the common enemy between like kind of the crypto world and like call it like average people and consumers and even like businesses, like small businesses, again, like small to medium to large, banks and credit card companies.
Intermediaries of all kinds, yeah.
All kinds of financial intermediaries. And we've been talking about financial intermediaries forever, right? Like that was Satoshi's, whole issue. That's why
that was the first principle, yeah.
Yeah. That's why he went to Bitcoin. He thought Bitcoin would be used for payments. Okay, well, it looks a bit different. I don't know how he would feel about it. But basically, that's how I see it playing out. I think it'll still be a struggle for it to be like fully baked. But I mean, I think like you're on the right side of history there. And hopefully, not hopefully, I mean, Genius did pass, right? So now it has to become law. And so basically, it's very good that the crypto community is so strong in terms of their ability to be in Washington and influence policy. And I think that's the right strategy. And I think, I think it's inevitable. But I don't know what you think. And also, you're coming from Mexico, like different, North America, but, different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, personally, I was trapped in Argentina during COVID.
Yeah.
There's a piece of lore. I was trapped in Argentina during COVID. That was the time where the economy was crashing the fastest. I've been getting paid in stable coins for the different jobs I've had ever since 2018.
Amazing.
So that was a huge relief because you get to save in US dollars. You get to... And obviously, like, the ramps were pretty weird at the time.
Yeah.
Literally dark alleys.
No, I know. Not just in Argentina, but yeah, I can imagine it's even worse. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the alleys are darker.
Yeah,
in the
end.
Yeah. And so, like, you see... But there was a very interesting time to also see, like, merchants starting adopting these things.
Yeah.
Both as a way to, like, evade tax and so on.
Yeah.
And to do payments, to survive, to save, to invest, actually, because when your currency is depreciating, having a stable coins, having US dollars is basically investing in your future.
Yeah.
So it's been quite an interesting thing to see happening from that side of the world. And now in your share, I had Centrifuge's head of legal team just a couple days ago. And he was talking about Genius precisely. He was talking about the time frames for it. So Genius shoots for a 3-year adaptation period, right? It's not... people in crypto like to think that whenever there's a headline, it's boom, it's done. Yeah. It's going to happen in a couple hours.
Yeah, that would be nice. No, I mean, so basically, there's like a 12-month window between when the president signed Genius into law and when it becomes operational through the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency. And that will basically open the window and the opportunity for issuers to apply, basically, to get a license. And so these are going to be, all sorts of companies, right? Banks, financial institutions, corporates, crypto companies that already exist that are setting themselves up. You have Tether that just entered the U.S. market with Anchorage a couple weeks ago with USAT. So Tether will be applying, I assume, for a license, or Anchorage rather, will be applying for a license to issue stablecoins such as Tether in the U.S. So, yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. But I think the Pandora's box has opened. Anything can happen. There could be a black swan event, of course. But I think at this point there's enough appetite and demand from everyone from average people to the very powerful, lobbyists and everyone in between that you can't really go back at this point. I don't know. It's fun when you think about stablecoins from really average American, or not just American, right? Anywhere in the world, but think about it from the U.S. perspective. You have you have the free market, you have capitalism, you have all sorts of businesses and innovation and goods and services, and the economy is what it is, and people need a more access, and they need also cheaper alternatives. At least the businesses do. They can't be paying 2-3% Visa, MasterCard forever. That's pretty incredible, and that gets passed off to consumers, and there's this really negative flywheel effect. And so I think stablecoins are going to kind of reduce fees. Of course, they're going to allow people to hopefully save some money. And anyways, it's going to be a revolution in payments, basically.
When you talk about the what's happening with Tether and the banking license, what's happening with the different banks that are announcing that they want to participate in the stable economy, I was thinking it could be fun to do the exercise of what the headlines will be progressively. So right now we got the headline, Genius Act passes. And next headlines are banks such and such decide that they will release their stablecoin projects. So what are the next, let's say, couple milestones as we move deep into the Genius Act?
I mean, you already had a pretty big announcement yesterday with Cloudflare. Cloudflare will be releasing a stablecoin, I think called Net, that will be used for agentic payments for their AI vertical. Kind of the introduction of stablecoins again, within the existing technological software infrastructure that powers everything from web browsing to PayPal to whatever, that is going to all have a stablecoin component within it in one way or another. I think maybe a big headline would be something the largest consumer-facing businesses have released their own stablecoin, basically, and are trying to cut out the credit card companies. I think that... I think a headline is, the total, market cap of stablecoins has reached $1 trillion. Obviously that's, an obvious one. I mean, I think basically you're going to see stablecoins being part of everyday life in a way that feels totally normal. That is not what we have been familiar with in crypto. That's more degen, more DeFi oriented. And I don't know, maybe there will be a bank out there that faces some systemic risk. It's unclear, or a group of banks, because there could be obviously deposits being moved to stablecoin products versus staying in your checking account that gives you 0%.
Especially as yields become more competitive, I reckon.
Yeah, and then maybe another one is rates go down if the pace of adoption is quick enough. It's unclear. I mean, I think all of those are on the table. But eventually, again, it'll be part of everyday life. So.
And from your own position, how does that look like? What are the goals that you're setting yourself to consistently hit when it comes to building what you're building and continuing to grow what you're growing in such a quickly developing field?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. So Noble today has about $500 million of TVL. We've done over $22 billion of transaction volume in the last 2 years. We need to make sure that we're scaling Noble's infra so that we can support incredible demand, because basically you're going to hit roadblocks in certain areas when you think about mass distribution and a lot of issuance. And so making sure that we're set up to be a router, we're set up to be a place of issuance, we're set up to support these call it normie applications, and just preparing for that, because I think a lot of times we think like, oh, like it's, easy to like, bootstrap like a layer 1. Well, it's not actually that easy. Like, in fact, it's actually quite hard to think about like, where we go from like the protocol level to like the wallet level to the app level and like everything in between, and making sure you're not just orchestrating across one stablecoin, but multiple stablecoins across, many geographies, many payments integration points. And so just preparing basically and continuing what we're doing and working with partners that we have worked with in the past and that we'll continue to work with in the future, and also new partners, and making sure we're flexible and reliable.
And when it comes to abstraction, when it comes to improving that user experience, because normie applications, you can have I think non-financial applications start getting a good shot once you have more interoperability between the existing banking system and stablecoins. So people don't have to think in terms of like anything that they do in crypto is pretty much an investment on ETH, in Bitcoin. People don't have to think about like the on-ramping, off-ramping problems and so on. They can just like find an application they want that gives them like digital ownership over something and do something with it. That's the end state for that. Which applications do you see yourself and other stablecoin issuers working closely with that can reach a broader audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think there's like a couple pieces to this. I think like what you see Stripe doing with like acquiring Bridge and Privy, I think is like a really good signal that obviously like the payment processing piece for like stable coins is like really important. Like if I can't actually, spend my, dollars with, a retailer, then they're less useful to me. And I actually maybe have no incentive to hold it, like if that's like too much friction. So I think that's like one side, so like on the payment processing side. And then, it's a good question. I think maybe the other piece is basically all of the up-and-coming fintechs and neobanks that are trying to compete with, the banks that are maybe more predatory on like the fees side. So I would say that's like the other piece that's maybe more financial in nature. But it's a good question. I also think like we still have some ways to go on the wallet side. Like the wallets are, like it's not Apple Pay. Like,
yeah, totally.
Like that, like it would be great to have that version and like that's a crypto native and it's like stablecoin native. So yeah, I would say across those three domains.
As we're getting to the end of this conversation, is there anything you wanted to cover that we didn't talk about yet?
No, this has been a really nice conversation. I think it's relevant, and I hope that it was informative from my perspective. And I guess just reiterating that I think stablecoins are basically a revolution in payments, and I think they'll continue to. It's just the beginning.
Is there anything you would want the people watching this to check out?
Yeah, Noble.xyz, we did launch a stablecoin ourselves in partnership with a team called M0 Labs. That's the Noble Dollar. So check out also dollar.noble.xyz. It's a very cool, interesting, innovative model for like designing a stablecoin and having it be like actually composable and thinking about that piece. And then I'm pretty active on X, so that's Jelena_Noble.
Yeah, please go and follow Jelena. And if you made it so far on this podcast, please like and subscribe this video. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and stay tuned. We'll keep on bringing on you great guests. Oh, I'm forgetting my English.
That's okay. It's a long day.
It's been a long day. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jelena.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you.